The rain had not stopped since dawn, flooding the narrow streets of a small barangay on the outskirts of Manila. Inside a public hospital, under flickering fluorescent lights, a single father stood barefoot on cold tiles, clutching a worn plastic bag that held his daughter's X-rays, and her tiny pink shoes she had never worn outside. The doctors spoke gently, but their words hit like stones. "She will never walk." The room went silent. His wife, thin, pale, barely strong enough to sit, tried to speak but her voice broke. Years of selling food by the roadside, years of skipping meals so their children could eat, had already drained her. When the doctor repeated the sentence, she collapsed into uncontrollable sobs, sliding down the hospital wall as nurses rushed to help her breathe. Other patients turned away, pretending not to see. In this country, pain like this was far too common. The father did not cry. Not yet. He thought of the long jeepney rides to therapy centers they could never afford. He thought of the billionaire doctors they had seen on TV, smiling beside advanced machines meant for families richer than his entire barangay combined. He remembered the moment his daughter first asked, "Papa, why can't I run like them?" He had no answer then. Outside the hospital, rain poured harder. He tied his daughter to his back with an old towel, just like mothers in the province do, and carried her home. Neighbors offered quiet pity. Some whispered prayers. Others whispered doubt. "Accept it," they said. "God has decided." That night, as his daughter slept on a thin mat, the father held her feet in his hands, small, warm, alive. He whispered a promise only God could hear. "If doctors won't help you walk, Anak, then your papa will." In the next room, his wife wept silently, believing this was the end. She did not know that in that moment, a man with no money, no medical degree, and no connections had just made a decision that would change their lives forever. And the world had no idea what was coming next. Morning came with the sound of tricycles and vendors shouting, "Pandesal." But inside the small rented room, there was no hope, only exhaustion. The single father counted the coins on the floor again and again. Still not enough. Not for therapy. Not for medicine. Not even for another hospital consultation. His wife watched quietly, her eyes swollen from crying through the night. They tried everywhere. Private clinics shook their heads the moment they saw the worn clothes and unpaid balances. One famous specialist, seen often on television beside luxury hospital equipment, didn't even examine the child for more than 5 minutes. Even with money, this would be difficult, he said. Without it, impossible. The word impossible followed them home like a curse. The father sold his motorcycle, the same one he used to deliver goods at night. Then his phone. Then, finally, his wedding ring. Each sale felt like losing a piece of his past, but he never hesitated. He watched his daughter crawling on the floor, smiling as if nothing was wrong, and felt his chest tighten with pain. Neighbors began to talk. "Why keep forcing treatments? God's will is God's will. You're just hurting the child." One night, his wife finally broke. As he gently moved their daughter's legs, slow, careful motions he had copied from an old photocopied booklet he found at a junk shop, she screamed, not from pain, but from fear. The mother rushed forward, pulling the child into her arms. "Stop, please," she cried. "You're not a doctor. Look at her, she's suffering. I can't watch this anymore." For the first time, the father's hands trembled. He turned away, pressing his face against the wall so his daughter wouldn't see his tears. Outside, rain tapped against the rusty roof. Inside, everything felt like it was collapsing, his family, his hope, his strength. But later that night, when everyone slept, he sat alone beside his daughter. He studied her legs, her feet, the way she tried to push herself forward. He whispered prayers in broken Tagalog, asking not for miracles, but for strength. "Lord, if this pain has a purpose, give me the courage to continue." The world had closed its doors on them. But the father refused to close his heart. And in that quiet, desperate darkness, something inside the child was slowly beginning to wake up. Weeks turned into months. The calendar on the wall still showed the same torn page, but inside that tiny room, something was changing, slowly, quietly, almost invisibly. Every night after long hours of work, the father sat on the floor, massaging his daughter's legs with warm coconut oil, whispering encouragement like a prayer. His wife watched from a distance, afraid to hope, afraid to be hurt again. Most days, nothing happened. Doctors had warned them not to expect progress. Neighbors had stopped asking. Even the mother had begun to accept that this was their life now. But the father kept going, counting seconds, repeating movements, refusing to miss a single night. Then one evening, as rain fell softly outside, it happened. The father was gently stretching his daughter's foot when he felt it, a tiny movement. He froze. His heart pounded. He watched closely. "Anik, move again," he whispered. Her toe twitched. Just once. He gasped, afraid to breathe. He repeated the motion, slowly, carefully. This time, the foot responded, barely, but clearly. Tears streamed down his face as he bit his lip to stay quiet. He didn't call his wife yet. He was afraid it might disappear if he spoke. The next morning, he tried again. The child lifted her leg, just a little, but enough to change everything. The mother screamed. She dropped the cup she was holding and fell to her knees, covering her mouth as tears poured down her face. "I saw it. I really saw it," she cried, shaking. But when they returned to the hospital, the doctors were unmoved. "It's just reflex," they said. "Don't give yourselves false hope." The words hurt more than before. That night, the mother told her husband to stop believing in dreams. "What if we get hurt again?" she whispered. The father said nothing. Instead, he pulled out his old phone, borrowed from a friend, and began recording. Every twitch, every lift, every small sign the world refused to believe. Pain remained. Progress was slow. Some nights the child cried. Some nights the parents cried with her. But something had changed. The impossible had cracked open, just enough. And in that tiny movement, smaller than a step, larger than a miracle, the father saw the future beginning to move. The world still doubted, but hope had already taken its first breath. Word had spread quietly at first, through neighbors, sorry stores, and late-night phone calls. The child who couldn't walk is standing now. On a warm afternoon, in front of their small home, people formed a circle. Some brought plastic chairs, others brought prayers, everyone brought disbelief. The mother stood near the doorway, one hand on her chest, still weak from everything she had endured. The father knelt a few steps away, arms open, his voice barely holding steady. "Anik, come to Papa." The child looked at him. Fear and determination flickered across her face. Her legs shook. For a moment, the world seemed to stop breathing. Then she moved. One step. The mother screamed. She broke down completely, falling to her knees as tears streamed uncontrollably down her face. Neighbors rushed to catch her as she cried like a woman released from years of buried pain, laughing, sobbing, thanking God all at once. The father's hands covered his mouth as his daughter took another step, then another, before falling safely into his arms. The crowd erupted. Some clapped, some prayed, some wept openly. A video of that moment traveled far beyond the barangay. Across the Philippines, across the world, people called it a miracle. Doctors were interviewed, specialists tried to explain, but no explanation felt enough. When asked how he did it, the father answered simply, "I am not a doctor. I am just a father who refused to stop." The mother, still shaking, held her child close and whispered through tears, "I thought God had abandoned us, but he was just waiting for us to believe." Today, the child still walks slowly. Not perfectly, not easily, but every step tells a story the world will never forget. That love can succeed where money fails. That faith can rise where science ends. And that sometimes, the greatest miracles are born in the smallest homes. Because a single father dared to believe, his child learned how to walk.